welcome to the Finance Committee September 16th meeting. Um, I'm going to go down the list to do our voice vote to officially kick off. Uh, Robert,
Robert here.
Arthur,
Here.
Kelly,
Lamb here.
Shireen, Sherry, as it says on your Zoom.
Diaz present.
Okay, and Chris, and Mike,
I'm here.
and I am here. Alrighty. So, with that, the first piece to cover, actually, let me talk about overall agenda first to start it off. So, we have a couple meeting minutes. We have one that I shared out. I have another one that I will actually share out after this meeting, and we'll just cover on our next meeting. I want to talk about the assigned departments, which does now include this new department aspect, which is this idea of a stormwater utility steering committee, which we do need to have a FinCom representative for. And then the additional thing I wanted to cover is the existing uh, departmental assignments, which are there's a number of them that we had set up in the past. I'll speak to that briefly, and we'll see if that's something that people want to continue to do. It actually ties in well with what Kelly's probably going to be presenting across the board tonight. So I'll do that after her speaking slot. But really, the only other piece that's out there is that we do have an upcoming special town meeting on November 10th. And the initial thing I want to bring up tonight to talk through is that part of that means, from a timeline standpoint, we probably have to, I don't know how many warrant articles there will be, but we probably have to go through a process of voting on all the warrant articles in a relatively quick format. Let me pull open Connor's email that he gave me. So current state is the draft warrant is going to be presented at the September 29th meeting of the Select Board. Special town meeting being November 10th. That's a small time frame of just October. So chances are we're going to have to cover all the warrant articles in one or two meetings. One seems like, I don't know how many there are. Again, there could be 5, there could be 25. I doubt there's 25. But if there are a significant number, then we're probably going to cut this out and say we'll do this many on day one, this many on day two. I'm bringing that up just to get everybody prepared for that. And so what I'll do after this is I'll probably float via our scheduling option a couple different options for October meetings. October is usually one of our heavier months anyway, so I'll just give you a bunch of pieces to click into. If you have preferences or if you want to talk through exactly what your current availability is or existing upcoming things, obviously feel free to ping me. We just want to make sure we have a quorum for those so we can get through those before that November 10th date. That covers point one. Point two is the meeting minutes that I sent around. I'm jumping out of order because I always do, which were for the 25th, I believe. Where did my list?
June 25th.
Yes. So I will give you all a moment to take a look at those. If there's any changes or updates or shifts on that you want to include, I can take those now, or I will accept a motion to approve and include and a second.
I make the motion to approve.
Okay. And second.
Second.
Thank you. All right. So let's go down the list. Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Arthur, how do I pronounce your last name correctly so I don't butcher it right now? Is it Balin?
You got it. I vote yes.
I literally just second guessed myself when I saw it after I wrote it down. Lamb,
Lamb, yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
Percio,
Yes.
DePietro,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Those are submitted. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn over the good old meeting to Kelly. Are you going to present anything?
I don't, I think you emailed everything out, right?
Yeah, I think I sent everything around, so that's fine. I wasn't sure if I had to change any of your role structure to do that, but with this, Kelly is our representative for the budget subcommittee. Obviously, with the existing structure of the budget nowadays and where we stand, there's been a lot of additional scrutiny and effort in looking at this from a holistic standpoint. So Kelly asked for a speaking role, a starring role, as it were. I think she's auditioning for chair, if you ask me. And so I granted her as much access as she needs to share the information from the budget sub with this audience. So Kelly, take it away.
Thanks, Patrick. Both Mike and I are actually on the budget subcommittee, and he just threw me under the bus to be the one to have to do this. So thanks, Mike.
I knew he tried to make you chair. I couldn't think of anything worse.
So the budget subcommittee has been meeting regularly, but we would like help from each of the other town committees because, as you know, not passing the override has significantly impacted the number of positions we have in town, with I think about 50 positions being eliminated last year. But there should have been more if we didn't use the reserves. There would have been significantly more because I think we had about 3.29 million in reserve use, and 2.2 came from the reserves, and I think 1.1 was free cash. So really thinking about next year and how we're going to proceed forward, that's not sustainable, right? We can't keep dipping into the reserves. So what does that look like? Some of the things that we were talking about was, should we go for another override? We were in a position where we could technically just do the same exact override by September 15th, I think. We actually eliminated that option and said we weren't going to go forward with that because the vote was overwhelmingly 2-1 against the override. So we didn't think that that made sense. But we can do another override next year and really think about, whether we want to do the same amount, a different amount, or there's different types of overrides that we can go for. So that's one of the things that the budget subcommittee is discussing now. There's a little bit of a time crunch on this because we have to make that decision by the end of December in order for the select board to file all the correct paperwork and have it ready for the April vote. So one of the things that we're asking for is help from each committee in getting the information we need so that we can really think about the policies and ways that we can raise or increase revenue. And so I know we've done the departments before in the past. I think that we definitely should continue with that moving forward, having people go to each department, ask them really about how their current situation is going with the layoffs that they've already had, and really get an understanding of, what they need, as well as, any ideas as to things they can do to increase revenue if it's possible, right? Like the DPW is looking at the stormwater fee. So, creative things like that, if it's, something that is possible for their department. So that's what we're asking. I actually sent Patrick a questionnaire to hand out to all of you. So this is something that I have to report back into the budget subcommittee every time we meet, is the information that you get using these questions, I have to take back to the budget subcommittee. One of the things that they also want me to explore with you guys is the option of a new override. I have some information which Patrick also sent out on different types of overrides. So we asked for like this general big 7.3 million, but there's also the option of doing menu based overrides, where you can say, here's this amount for this department. Of course, it's nice that you have specific ask. I think, people in the town like to see that. But the other part is like you're almost pitting departments against departments. So that's the downside of that type of override. But it explains all of that in the stuff that Patrick sent out. I don't know if anyone had a chance to read it beforehand, if anyone wants to discuss or share their thoughts or opinions around that.
Patrick,
that
when
I
did you send
received
that
it.
out? Yeah, because I don't recall ever seeing it.
This was sent out in the When did I send it? This was the initial response to the confirmation of the meeting, which was the budget website and the questionnaire. And then there was a subsequent earlier, I don't know when I sent the other one.
Was it the
But that
one
was sent out on. So
Was the one
September
sent out
11th.
on the 10th or
That was the
11th?
11th. You were copied on that on the 11th. It had the Zoom details for tonight, as well as underneath it the paragraph of the budget website information, and then the questionnaire.
You want me to share what it looks like?
Yeah.
I'm
What I can
seeing-
do is I can also recollect everything after this and send it back out. The piece that I wanted to include in this conversation was about exactly what Kelly was just saying, which is the budget assignments that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
Which it might be that this is the kickoff of that time frame, just to get everyone up to the where are we in this process? What can you understand and learn from the existing aligned departments that you're associated with? And thus, what can we bring back to our next meeting, which is going to be one of those 2 warrant article meetings to drive this conversation forward. Let me share my screen for 1 sec, just because I have this up. This is what the budgetary assignment looks like. Hold on. And I don't know if everyone's as familiar with this as they were, but let's just at least touch on it. So this is what we had set up. So when we originally configured this back then, you're all seeing the FinCom departmental assignments, right?
Yeah.
So when we had originally configured this was almost 9 years ago, I think. The existing leadership of the Finance Committee at that point had said, hey, these are the various different departments. The FinCom typically has a very key aspect of approving these budgets and being part of these budget conversations, but we have them after the departments have already gone through a lot of their cycles. That's still the case, but if we carve out some assignments for these various different budgets and break them out into these different clusters, then everyone that's on the committee can have some sort of representative association and dive in and sort of have that communication aspect and say, hey, for instance, I used to have the library. I don't remember what else I had. I had library and I think planning. I had cluster 8 before. When I joined the library board, I shifted over to the cluster 1. But effectively, I would then go out to the select board. I would go out to ourselves. Shocking. Where are we? I would go to town council, town clerk, and I would have a conversation with them exactly as Kelly was just outlining to say, not can we bring you a suggestion on how you're going to fix this budget, right? We're obviously volunteer board. We are not the experts in this scenario, but where are you in that process? What have you found out? What is coming down the pipe that we can make sure we understand exactly what the impacts are going to be? Is there anything that we can suggest? Is there anything that we can help with? Where are you in that status? And that way, when we come back to these meetings from a warrant article standpoint, we have additional exposure to those departments, and we can have a more intelligent conversation about it. So, long story short, we have not been too in depth with these over the last few years, just because it hasn't been as needed. You know, Connor and team have done such a great job of obviously keeping up with this. The department heads have been very good at it. They've been doing, we've said this a million times, an excellent job with what they're able to get. So it hasn't been as critical. With the current budget standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to dive back in. So this is the current assignment. I didn't even check to see if this is, yeah, Arthur, you're on here. This is the current assignment list. We can go through a process of reassigning. We can go through a process of sort of, if people want to raise their hands for some of the more thorny, which are, Robert, you had raised your hands for some of the bigger ones, right? But
Yep.
cluster 4 and cluster 3 are kind of the big ticket, as well as schools. We can move these around, but this is current state. So if there's any interest in shifting stuff around, we can definitely speak to that. It's going to have to be a conversation with the full board, though, to have an understanding as to who wants what and where. Any questions or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just
Do
saying.
we have any context for how big the gap? I mean, is it as simple as the gap is equal to what we tapped into reserves from last year, or has it grown? Like,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
so it's
there's
gonna be,
tariffs, there's cost increases, right? There's all kinds of things that are almost all of them negatively impacting cost structure is not positively. There's a whole bunch of union contracts that I think are up, right? They don't only extended for 1 year that have uncertainty. So I mean, I don't, the departments I'm assigned to, I'm not all that worried about. They're rather small, but like, it's kind of difficult to go to the police chief without the context of like, the town has a problem the size of X and we don't know what X
Yeah,
is.
so yeah, you're, like Patrick has said, you're not really there so much to like offer solutions, is really gather the information as to what is happening. So for like example, I've heard rumors about, you know, some of the people, at the fire station, their shifts are like double the amount of time that they were, which staying for, you know, 4 days is not safe. And so really, you know, I don't know if that's true, right? Like I said, that's rumor, but so you can go and verify the information as to what is happening, and get a better understanding of their needs. Or you can even ask questions about what their plans are, knowing, because they know that we are at least the reserves plus inflation, right? And so we don't know about changes to the governor's budget or anything like that at this point. We should have a little bit more idea in December, January. And we're going to start making some assumptions based on that preliminary information, where we usually wait a little bit. But we feel like because we're going to be making this decision as to whether or not we're going to be asking for the override, we have to make some assumptions. But that
None of the
Sorry,
warrant questions in so on November 10th are related to this then. In,
they'll be related in some way, shape, or form, because there will be like capital and a variety of other sort of budget line items, but not directly related to specifically the override necessarily. It is all connected in, you know, the ether. I think the other thing, which was the original aspect of this, is that part of this is also I think Kelly brings it up in a good way. Like, if there are pieces of information that we can disseminate through this platform, then that's the other benefit that we bring here, right? We are laymen for the majority of this. If we're having a conversation, if I'm having a conversation with the town clerk and we have an in-depth conversation about the impacts of what the current budget situations are and potentially upcoming in-draft state warrant articles are going to be, that's something that I can bring back to this meeting, have a, you know, a shorthand representative example of what that means, and we speak about it. This is now recorded. This is on ECAT. This is another piece of information that's out there. It makes it, in some way, shape, or form, at least bring that information to another format, so it's not as impactful completely out of the blue at like a town meeting association. That does require people to be that much more invested and obviously get to these meetings or review these meetings after the fact, but it's also part of it to bring it to more to our attention. So if there is any benefit or any cross-pollination that this board can bring, fantastic, right? We're all in this the same boat for it. So if there's something that we can discover or a conversation that sparks some creativity, fantastic. Do I think we're going to solve it? Of course not, right? We have professionals that are diving into this every day.
But we will be making decisions, 100%.
Correct.
So we will be
100%.
deciding, like, okay, so say we decide not to do the override. Do we make all the cuts at once, or do we use a little bit of the reserve funds and just make a few this year and then a few more next year? You know, we're gonna have to discuss. I have my own opinions about that, but I want I want to go with the board's opinion, to the budget subcommittee. So there'll be decisions there. And then if we do decide we want to do an override, you know, we've kind of seemed to be going in the direction of, if we do an override, it'll be a menu type of override. But I want to hear your thoughts and be able to speak on behalf of the board. So
yeah, that's the other real good aspect here, is that similar to last year, right? I was part of the PACE committee. We had all these huge meetings. We had all this opportunity. We did a lot of like roundtables and discussion points at various different places in town, where the PACE committee had, this is the PACE committee's point of view. We were not all in agreement on everything, but here's our point of view, and here's what we think. Here's some handouts. Here's some information to make sure the average citizen in town has a better understanding. This helps benefit that exact conversation, because Kelly nailed it. You know, future chair Kelly nailed it, in that the ability for us to have a snapshot, elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it, of this is the current state of the problem. You called it out perfectly, Chris. Like, hey, I know what the problem was last year because we literally had a line item for it. I don't know what it is now, right? We're all back from whatever we did all summer. This has not been a constant check-in for us. Now that we're getting back into it, do we have that elevator pitch that we can use if we are out? You know, we're at Langwater for pizza night or whatever it is, and we can have that conversation with someone.
And I think the
Yeah.
questionnaire will help you talking to the department. So bring it with you and just, you can follow along. If you think of questions that you'd like to add to it, let me know as well, because I can take that back to the budget committee, and I'm sure it could benefit other committees.
That's another really good point because I think what a lot of people struggled with in the past is they'd be like, "Oh, I called the planning committee or I called, the select board and I said, hey, how are things?" Right? I didn't have like a structure or a matrix to go off of. So that's a really good point. Like this at least puts, hey, the budget subcommittee is asking us to have a better understanding of this for our own purposes, but also to make sure we're covering this as an exhaustive conversation across all these different things. We do by no means have to go through and check off every single box in there. It's a conversation starter though, which helps to benefit everybody.
Let me ask, I'm sorry, Shireen, just quickly, what's the timeline for this? What's this?
So ideally, we want to be making our decision by the end of November. So we need a couple of meetings, I think, to talk through all of it.
So
I'm
we've got
wondering,
easily. Oh,
Kelly,
go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, Kelly, I'm wondering if you could set up the questions in a Google form type of scenario and just email us that form, and then as we're having the meetings, we can just, type the answers in.
So I have to check on that. Just because the town rules are always so weird. I know that when it came to even coming up with questions, I couldn't email the entire group. I could only email the chair the questions I thought. And so let me just make sure that that's okay, that we can dump it in there and all view it at the same time, or if that violates some sort of rule. And if it's okay, then I'll do it. If not, then we'll just have to use our sheets and take our own notes.
Good question. Yeah.
This is like a handwritten thing that we're like turning in.
Well, you'll speak to it at the meetings.
Right. And these are finance committee meetings, correct, Kelly? We're coming back here to discuss these, correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yep. And then I'll take everything you guys say and write it up, and I'll present it at the budget subcommittee.
She's our representative example for the budget sub to speak about everything that the FinCom has had.
And Mike will keep me in check. He'll remember things I don't. Right, Mike? Is he even there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I'll remember all the things. I'm extra reliable that way.
Yeah, sure is.
Maybe a citizen question more than a FinCom question, but in the last override, if we end up going down that path, I think there was there were four groups of people, right? They're against it under all circumstances. They were for it under all circumstances. They would be for it if it was for emergency services, but not the schools, or they would be for it if it was the schools, but not emergency services. And has there been any thought to, so I think polling the departments is useful. Has there been any thought to polling the public?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that. Like a lot of people were like, oh, there wasn't enough information. PACE was everywhere. They were everywhere. Tom, God bless his heart, for, meeting after meeting after meeting. I don't know how he has the stamina to do that. But yeah, so we're still in discussions about that, because we feel like no matter how much we put it out there, how many opportunities, we're still, people don't know.
Interesting though. Chris, you bring up a good point, because you must have been reading my mind. I'm not used, PACE put out a lot of information. People just didn't realize, I don't think, at least the people I talked, didn't realize what the impact was going to be. I don't know if they thought that PACE was kidding, or, teachers being laid off, classes being too big. But let me ask, Kelly, sometimes it takes a lot of pain for people to come around. I don't know. Before we did the override, people were telling me, oh, Easton never passes an override. Easton never. I said, well, they're getting a lot of information out, but it was defeated so convincingly. I was a little bit taken back by it. So
Yeah.
I mean, it calls for a strategy session. I don't know what the answer is, but Chris, you bring up a good point. I mean,
One
you
of the
must be
things
reading my
that
mind.
I
I
heard a
said,
lot of, I would have voted for it if it didn't have this, or I would have for it if it didn't have that. And it was generally a lot of that was I would have voted to keep the police and keep the fire and keep the ambulance, but I think that there's more than enough teachers, and I don't care if the classroom sizes get bigger. And so,
Yeah.
while I personally am in exactly the opposite camp, but I think perhaps if there were options, or if I wonder in hindsight if we could have got closer if it was drafted a different way, that because the public was pre-polled and we kind of knew that predisposition.
so I know that, we are talking, because we mentioned, like, we have passed these capital budget things when it's a very specific ask, the town comes out and supports. So that's why, we were thinking maybe the menu might be a little bit better. People like to know exactly where the money is going. There's just a general distrust, no matter what political party you're affiliated with, there's a general distrust of leadership right now. And so I think be more specific helps that. I also feel like, as much, I mean, Pace put all that information out there, and you need like a PhD to go through the website. I feel like having simpler messages would actually be better. I said that in the meeting, although I think nobody agreed with me, but I do feel like simpler messages of really understanding, like, this is what our firefighters are having to do now, right? My sister-in-law went from 19 students in her class to 25. They may not sound like a lot until you find out she's a kindergarten teacher. These are 5 years, 6 more 5-year-olds. So it's, maybe folks,
And probably down an aide on top of it.
yeah, right. And so I think having simpler messages, but, to your point, Robert, people didn't believe, because I think, and this is one of the reasons why Pace was doing so much education, is people don't understand the budget process, is that we have to balance the budget every year. So every year we're in a deficit to begin with, and then we balance the budget. And so people were like, oh, every year we're in a deficit, and then they fix it. So they're going to find the money. So I think there was a little bit of disbelief because they didn't understand how the town works, that we have to balance the budget.
Right.
So that was part of it too.
I think like two things like come to mind, just kind of bouncing off of Chris's point. I think one thing would make sense too, if we're going to the public, is getting an idea of what amount would be palatable, not even just like departmental, but like what the amount would be, because I think something that Connor kept coming back to, and I think we need to be aware of, is we're the global economic situation could be better, and I think it's something that people are dealing with. And I think we need to be sensitive to that, because we can do all this planning that we want, but at the end of the day, if we go to public and with an override and it doesn't get allowed again, then here we are. So I think we need to be, I think, cognizant of not just departmental pitches, but like being aware of like what amount we should be asking for, and I think what would be acceptable to the public. And I know a lot of people would say no amount's acceptable, and that's their right to do so. But I think having that conversation is probably worthwhile too. And I think one thing that I would have wanted to hear more of is, what, when we talk about numbers like 19 versus 25 students in kindergarten, what's the standard, like what's the pedagogical difference? And obviously that's just for schools, but for fire, for police, having one ambulance sounds bad. What's the standard? And I realize we talk about sort of like the practical implications for ambulance, but I think just like kind of talking about what the standards are and how we would be dipping below the standard if we don't make changes. I think is something that I think would be helpful to the public.
And I think we did do that too. I mean, we compared ourselves to like the surrounding towns, and we are constantly doing more with less.
Significantly less.
So I think I would respond to that by saying if Sharon, if everybody, Massachusetts has fantastic public schools across the board. If everybody's above the threshold of what's pedagogically acceptable, then that metric doesn't necessarily work as well. I think it's for competitiveness standpoint. If in terms of being competitive with our neighbors, that's important. But I think like saying, hey, if we go to 25, pedagogically, this will hurt your children is a far more convincing thing than saying, hey, we're worse off than Sharon.
To be honest with you on that point, the reality is we did share this information with people and were resoundingly defeated. I mean, my perspective, and I don't mean this to be overly negative, but my perspective is increasingly we voted for austerity. Our community wants, we all want everything we can have for free. That's not interesting. But when it comes to you've got to pay for it, our community voted 2-1 to say we prefer burning out teachers and firefighters and being unable to hire firefighters to backfill because we're losing money. We prefer dipping into one-time savings. We prefer fewer police. I mean, it's a we're talking about how can we tell a better message? And sure, you can always improve your messaging, but gosh, how much better messaging could we have come up with than a team of people that devoted thousands of hours to scrutinizing every aspect of our budget, turned around, provided information, and you know, we had people saying, "Nuh-uh, nanny, nanny, foo-foo, we don't want that." So, I mean, I'm just increasingly of the mind that this is what people want.
I would
them
say
have
to
it.
that.
Oops, sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I would say to that, I agree with you. I think we did compare and contrast across a wide variety of communities, not from a, I know you weren't saying this, Arthur, but not from a competitive standpoint, but more from a look at what we're doing with a significantly smaller footprint of humans, of capital expenditure, etc., compared to the like-sized towns that are in our geographic direct neighborhood, as well as just like-sized towns across the Commonwealth. That's a key point, right? If our citizens say, great, thank you, we don't care, we're going to vote this down because it is something we're voting for austerity's sake, right? That's their right. I would say on top of that, the difficulty is, and I don't remember who said it earlier, but the difficulty is that a lot of times this is something that it does seem like it is an academic conversation until there is a point of pain. And that point of pain is now starting to come to full realization. Like, this is Patrick Helen, not FinCom chair, but like I know for a fact there are people that are not offering certain things at the high school because the fees at the high school obviously have gone out significantly. I know that there's been a lot of blowback to the new fee structure at like field rentals and whatnot, which, to be fair, good. There should be both additional fees and significant blowback, but the problem is that you can't have both. You can't be like pissed that the fees are more and be thrilled that you voted down the over. Well, I guess you could be, but you're just a hypocrite, right? Like that's the issue we're facing. Human nature is full of hypocrites. I'm sure I've made myself multiple times on this call. Human nature. Right, it is. But the end result is that there isn't an easy solution from this other than if we get to the point, and I've used this example before, if we get to the point of like a Plainville that had like a massive 16% cut across all departments, and then the next year they passed an override because they were like, oh, everything's awful, right? That could be the net result if there isn't some sort of mitigation factor placed. Am I advocating for that without any information? Nope, sure not. Am I saying that it's going to be a very distinct conversation we're going to have over the next several months? Sure am. So I'm
I think
echoing those points.
I sort of agree with the direction that both you and Mike were taking in terms of if we don't go after an override, I don't think that we come in with reserve funds. I think that we make the cuts across the board. I think one, you want like the impact, I think that would be felt right away, but also I also think like people will know that there's another round coming the year after, and what that does to morale is awful, right? I mean, it the morale I'm sure is tough right now, knowing that we're going into this next year potentially making cuts. That's not great for anyone. It's not healthy for anyone, and so I think I've always been a rip the band-aid off sort of person, anyways. But I just think that is best for everybody.
And I think,
Those are,
to the town's credit, oh, sorry, Chris, I know you wanted to go. Go ahead before I go.
no, that's all right. Good.
To the town's credit, to the people of the town's credit, it is very hard to have a deep dive understanding or interest. I don't even have to use understanding, interest in your average municipal budget factor until it's something that shows up at your door, right? If you don't have kids in the school and you're a relatively healthy, like mid 50s person, not right, you're not using any services right now. For you, the thing that's annoying is you're like, why the hell is my water bill going up? Right? That's the point that makes it understood. Or trash fees, lame, right? I get it. It's hard to bury your head in the sand. I had a conversation with someone who was like, my kids are literally going to be out of school. I don't care anymore. I'm counting down the days till I sell the house and I, move to Florida or go to the Cape or whatever. And
They
it's
should care about the value of
yeah,
their house, though, right? In the school system, it's directly tied.
100%. But some people just don't, right? And that's the unfortunate nature. I think to your point though, Kelly, and I agree with you 100%, is that we being in this sort of interesting, hey, we're looking at this stuff quite a bit, right? Our favorite thing to do is to look at 6,700 page budget documents. We see the impacts of what's coming in 6 to 10 months.
Right.
And we're not, this isn't a Nostradamus thing. If you wanted to, person at home, read through a 6,000 line item report, you could find it too. It's that knowing that that's coming gives us a hell of a lot more anxiety, and thus we see the results of what a rip the band-aid off scenario might be a lot easier than someone who's like, I have so many things on my plate already. I'm not worried about municipal budgets. I'll worry about that when my fees go up. Chris, go ahead. I've cut you off like 17 times.
All right. So 2 points, Kelly. I agree with you. I actually think in hindsight, I disagreed with using the reserves this year. We should have ripped the Band-Aid off last year, because these conversations that we're going to embark on right now would have been a lot more impactful now if we had not tapped into the reserves and watered down the override a year ago. And I would be against using reserves this year to do the same. But I do think, I think the communication from the task force was outstanding. I think it was almost too good. I actually think people understood everything really well.
I agree.
And I think, back to your menu comment, I think if there was a menu of items, if people had if there was a budget line item and said, and there was we're going to lay off 30 paraprofessionals in the school unless you check yes, it gets through. We're gonna lay off 10 police officers and firemen unless you check yes. It's gonna pass.
So yeah, so there's like all these rules about how you word things. And so it can't be negative. It can't like.
I understand. I wasn't suggesting we would actually word it just like that, but I didn't think we'd like, we're going to lay off Connor Reed unless you check yes. No, I didn't think, but we do know that there's a public sentiment out there that there are certain hot button topics, right? There's a third assistant principal at the middle school that's a hot button target. There's a DE&I person that's a hot button target. There's an assistant town administrator that's a hot button topic, right? Like there's public sentiment out there that, and there are literally people that voted down this override because they refused to vote for it, while like these little details in the, on a $100 million budget were still in place. And so
Yes.
I just.
So I don't know exactly like what the menu would look like. It might say some examples, if you go on the website, which Patrick can send out again, that goes through like all the rules and regulations. I have like a summary worksheet, but also a link to the website where you can go through it all. But it wouldn't be as specific as like this person's position or that person's position. Like that's not allowed.
Oh, but it could be for a department or a section
like
of the
school,
town, or a class of employees, like paraprofessionals, or like it could be larger swaths like that
You bring up a good point. I think to that point, one of the other struggles I think we're going to have regardless is that I think people did a really good job of speaking about that human impact side of it at town meeting, right? We had a lot of people get up and be like, here's my 2 cents on it. I want you to understand what this is going to do to me or what this is going to do to my family or what this is going to do. But that is a very small subset of the overall voting public, right? So the overall voting public are the ones that said, nope, we're not doing this. Whereas town meeting said, yes, we are. And so to your point, that human interest angle, if this was the 1930s, we could do a lot of yellow journalism and just print a lot of like scaremongery tactic articles, and boom, we'd have our override and we'd have the latest and greatest, soda fountain on every street corner. But it's not, and so we don't have that sort of local journalism aspect that we can really rely on. So it's more word of mouth. I think I'm not smart enough to solve this problem. I think we're going to have to rely on Connor and Kelly. So I'm going to go ahead and abdicate my throne. And Kelly, thank you so much for stepping up and being the new chair of the FinCom. I really appreciate all your work today.
Nice try, Patrick. Yeah, so I think these are exactly the type of conversations that we need to keep happening. And I hope too, after, you guys read all the documents that I sent and anything else that budget subcommittee gives to me, I'll send to Patrick so he can send it out. It will help us really be able to figure it out. Our recommendations. Obviously, the budget subcommittee, then everyone comes together and then they'll decide. And I think at budget subcommittee, we're going to have a lot of the departments come and present to us, Patrick. So I'm going to see a lot of the departments there. I don't think I should be the person for school anymore either, because there's a representative from the school. Leisha's on
Yeah.
So maybe
we can schedule that. I'm going to make a note that we'll schedule sort of a reshuffle. I think we originally reshuffled because one of the other people that was on it then got hired by the schools. So we were constantly sort of in flux on what those coverages were. The good thing is that, to your point, this is an opportunity to have a deeper conversation with them regardless. So we can set that up. I'll try to get, if nothing else, I'll try to get an expectation from everyone as to what their preferred department would be, so that if we do not get a full all 9 members, fine, we can at least put people into positions where they have some outreach opportunities. But I'll make a note of that. And then to your other point, I will share Connor sent like a full breakdown, which effectively became the fiscal year 26 budget website. So I'll resend that, as well as the budget website link, as well as the questionnaire link, just so we all have it. And then I'll resend, I think I sent this out, but I'll resend the stormwater piece, which we're going to talk about next, just so everyone has everything relevant.
Did you mention that you would, I'm sorry, so did you say that you would share out the stuff around the overrides to the different types of overrides? Okay.
Yeah, I'll re-forward because you had the explanation about the override, which I thought was part of the initial. I might not have emailed that. I'll double check that I sent that. But that's a public document that I'll resend, along with the questionnaire, along with the specific budget website, and then I'll include Connor's breakdown of said budget website, which I think is part of the budget website, but I'll re-include that anyway, so everyone has all that. And then I'll send out a snapshot of the current departments at the same time, so everyone can take a look at everything and say, I would like to raise my hand for this department or that department, etc.
Okay. And can I get a pulse before you guys even talk to your departments? Are you leaning towards no override or trying for an override in the spring?
I can speak for myself. I distinctly pushed for an override at last time. I think being on the PACE committee made it very obvious through hundreds of hours of meetings that this was something that had a significant benefit impact to the town. So I'm already in that boat. I don't see anything changing in the short term that would change my mind on that.
And of the opinion that it would be. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And as for me, I would want to chat with the departments first, and also have some more like just public conversations where possible, and then come back with a succinct answer.
Chris?
I don't think that town officials should lay off town employees unless they're directed to by the citizens. So the way that citizens do that is by rejecting an override. So I think,
does that mean you're for giving them the option?
Yeah, but I would give them as much option as possible. I think the all or nothing approach that we took last year was turned out to be a mistake.
Okay, Arthur?
Yeah, I think I would want to caucus with the departments and kind of see where everybody is. I think the need is certainly there. I also am cognizant of the fact of the financial situation that I think a lot of our citizens are in right now. I think Chris is absolutely dead on that option is good, and we should give our citizens as much option as possible. I also think we need to have some outreach about kind of where our citizenry is at and what is a reasonable ask for our citizenry. I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs. I think we're just in a really difficult situation right now. So I think the conversation should be open.
Robert?
I'm a little bit of in a quandary here because I don't believe in doing the same thing over and over again, especially if it didn't work the first time and it was defeated. It was I was just surprised how it was 2-1, no contest. So if you want to do an option, that's fine. I'm not sure if that's going to be any better. I don't know. I like the idea of communicating um, with the committees and just seeing. I don't know how you could better communicate than Pace did with the community. They were everywhere. Information was out there. All you had to do is look. And they told you what was going to happen, and what they said was going to happen happened. It's like having a crystal ball. So I'm, I'm I like the idea. I just don't want to do the same thing we did last time because it didn't work.
So you'd favor more like the menu, doing something differently
Menu,
around the.
something different. If
Okay.
you're going to do an override, you got to do something different.
Okay. Mike, what are your thoughts? I know your thoughts, but can you share them with the group?
Yeah, I mean, as a citizen and as somebody who understands the budget and the process here, I feel that Easton absolutely needs an override. There is no other near-term solution that will address the structural revenue deficit that we face year after year, and which has gotten to the crisis that we're in the middle of. As somebody who's been elected to lead in town, having seen the voice of the town and speaking in terms of my role on the finance committee, I say we should not immediately pursue any attempted override. I don't believe that the town is going to change their mind in any meaningful way and provide any additional funds uh, to the town. So I know it's almost a contradictory answer. I, as a person, support it, and based on my knowledge, it's something that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking in terms of what I would advocate for on the finance committee, I would say it doesn't make sense. We won't actually move the needle by going down that path.
Well, I mean, our role isn't to make this happen. It's to decide really how to give voters the option, right? They decide in the end. We just make recommendations, right? If you feel that, you can recommend that it would benefit the town, we make that recommendation. Voters make the decision. If that makes you feel any better. But
What I mean is if there isn't, if an override is put forward by the select board, right? I'm going to advocate for it. I'm going to tell everybody I know it's important, so I'm going to represent the facts as best I can. What I'm saying is that as somebody representing the town, my interpretation of the opinion of the town is that they would not support an override. Moreover, any sort of partial override, anything that delays that experience of the pain that comes with the deficit will serve only to make that pain worse. So going back to the ripping off the band-aid, until folks are facing all of the realities of not having an override, they're not going to support the override that's needed. So
well, yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. That's your feeling based on the conversations you're having with people. I still don't think it's fair to assume. I think that when you look at the data, Mike, you were at the last meeting, but we also received some data and it was sent out in an email. We asked, really, can you send us information about the success of menu overrides, but also looking at it, you can see the success of how many times towns fail, and then the next year they pass. It happens
But is
quite
it?
often.
But is that, Kelly, due to the, like, we keep using the term pain because I don't have a better word? Is that due to the fact that people actually realize the pain? And to that point, is it you're getting further behind the eight ball if you don't do it in a, I guess, expeditious way or in a better time frame. It only gets worse if we go to an override and we do the selections and it still fails. Okay, so we make more cuts. The pain is going to be worse than it was this year. And then when you do the override in the third year, because now you're in year three, trying to do an override and people feel the pain, you get it. But how does that catch you up? It doesn't catch you up. It just
Well, those overrides, if you look at the sheet, and I could probably send it to you, Patrick, if you want to send it out, they're usually more. So once an override fails, the
okay.
next year it passes is typically a higher number.
A higher amount. Okay.
I have. I'm doing this live. I've got the override information link, which is the Mass 2.5, the full budget website, your full list of things that came from Connor, including the memo. I think everyone has gotten those in the past. I've got your questionnaire. I've got the stormwater utility option. I'm including the departmental budget piece right now. If you want to send me what you have for that additional document, then I'll attach this to the same email that's going out.
So this is, well, let me save it to my computer so I can.
You can do it after the meeting. We don't need. You
Okay.
Don't need it's fine.
Okay. Let me just. Can I share what it looks like so you guys?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Let me know if you have any issues with sharing though.
So,
Oh no, you're good.
yeah. So when you
Make it a
see,
little larger. Can you make it a little larger?
this is why I'm wearing my
There we
glasses
go.
today.
All right.
So it's by the town, and then you can see the year. So when you see the same date in the same year, that's most likely a menu override
Hmm.
because it's entered.
Great.
Each
Right.
menu can win or lose, right? Each item.
Mhm.
So this is what that. And you can go online and look at the history of town overrides even bigger than this. I'm not sure if this was just specifically looking at menu overrides.
You can kind of see over to the right so some of them are just for the school, some public safety, general government. So are those the menu options?
Yep.
Or the menu
Yeah. And then you get more
groupings?
information here. So I haven't had time to really go through it with a fine tooth comb. I did look at the website trying to see so I don't know if it's in this or if I saw it on the website where you can see that when an override fails and people go back the next year, that a large portion of them actually passed. But you can see there's a whole website on mass.gov dedicated to overrides. So that's what we can look at and sort of, get a better understanding of strategies that have worked versus maybe what didn't work. Like if it's general operating, do we see more losses? Asking just for general funds versus specific
Line items. Yeah. So send that on after this, and I'll include that. I've got everything else in here, I think. And I'll get
Patrick, can you also include the contacts for those departments? Can you include the contact?
That should be all on the main Easton website.
Okay.
I don't even know offhand mine, but I can find the right.
That's fine. We can,
I'll
like
look
you
at
said,
the
we can
Easton
go
board
to the
page. I think it's all just it's on the individual Easton board and committee pages.
Yep.
And if anyone creates like a standard email of like when you reach out, like, hi, I'm Robert from FinCom and this would.
I might.
Well, the other thing is that I know the police the police chief has changed. The fire department has changed since the last time I've talked to them, which was, I believe, 2 years ago. So again, but I do know the current.
Get pulled over.
Yeah, just get pulled
I
over.
was gonna say, they're both very nice chiefs, so you shouldn't have any problem.
Yeah, actually,
See, I
I'm
was
happy to
looking
talk
for
to
you.
Chiefs instead of you. Like, I adore both of those dudes. They're both.
Yeah.
They're both very nice.
Yeah. So I'll send out, that I'm
Yeah, I might have
they know I'm on the finance committee, and I'll reach out to them and set up a time to go talk to them during, what's convenient for them and what I can make work. Usually
I might have a good snapshot email that I've sent in the past. But I think I was sending them to like Uma at the library, which was like, "Hey Uma, want to chat? Yes, come over." So it might not be as as impactful as that, but I definitely have some templates somewhere that I'll see if I can drag out.
Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, considerations on this topic? Kelly, thank you so much for your audition.
Who wasn't
slash
here?
presentation.
Who wasn't here today that we need to fill?
We're missing Christina. We're missing Jay. Is that everybody? And Shireen just had to drop, so that's everybody.
Okay. Maybe do like a summary in the email too, so they
Yeah.
ask of them.
Yep, I can give a quick preamble about it. Good call. All right, so that's that. And then since everything's related to fees and structure right now, we do also have this idea of a stormwater utility steering committee. I myself did not know what a stormwater utility was. I did some brief digging and I read through the information that we have sent around. Essentially, it's hey, part of the stormwater mitigation of maintaining and adapting, obviously, our stormwater systems is generally put back onto the town itself, be that through a measure that raises a small amount of money per the overall non-permeable land, rooftops, driveways, etc., of individual homeowners, as well as then obviously the bigger ticker items, which would be like, guess who the biggest non-permeable land in town is? It's people like like a Stop and Shop, a Shaw's, etc. So this is just the first planning stage, right? I don't know any other details other than what I shared, which is the select board has voted to establish this steering committee to start the process of determining what the town's approach will be to creating a stormwater utility. So nothing set in stone. My back and napkin understanding is anything in this scenario is still going to have to go to town meeting and town committee engagements. So it is at least similar to what we did with PACE committee when it came out. We're looking for various different appointments from Finance Committee, Planning and Zoning, and the Environmental Stewardship Committee. So as part of the departmental conversation, this is essentially, hey, is this something that anyone has any interest in and wants to raise their hand for? We do need to appoint someone. They are trying to get this squared away because the select board's voting on the people that are going to raise their hand from a resident standpoint, because there are 3 resident appointees as well on, I believe, their September 29th or maybe September 30th meeting. So they're looking for a volunteer from our side that we can then appoint as well. I already have all the documentation ready to go if someone does choose to raise their hand for this. If not, we can go through the process of seeing if the other members that are not here tonight have any interest, but I'm opening it up to the people that are here first if anyone would like to raise their hand.
So this is more so just setting up more a policy, or is it more just to strategize on whether or not what this committee will look like?
I think it's everything. I think it's all of the above. It's hey, are we going to create one? We're starting the process to all that's been voted on from the select board is to establish this committee to then determine what the impacts, the costs, the benefits, the detriments, the pros and cons are for this type of utility if it is established. So I think you're looking at all of that. What would this be? What is the policy associations, etc. So it's probably comprehensive to start and then narrows in focus as you get further along, but I don't have that information offhand.
And when is the first meeting?
Has not been established yet. The initial vote, whenever we establish our appointee and the other 2 boards establish theirs, the vote from the select board on people that have raised their hands from a resident standpoint is sometime at the end of September. I don't have the exact date in front of me. It actually might be in the email. Let me see. It is. Select board's voting on the 3 resident members of the committee at their meeting on September 29th. So if we get someone appointed before that time frame, then I assume the committee's charter and schedule will be established after that fact.
I'm interested, but if anybody else wants to step up, please do.
That's weird. That's how I became chair. Weirdly enough, no one stepped up. Robert, if you'd like, if you want to have a deeper dive on it before I appoint you, we can go through the process of, you can just reach out to Sean, our delightful assistant town administrator, I think is running the charge on this to start. If you want, I can just send an email to the 2 of you, and if you have any questions about that, you can ask him directly.
Yes.
And if it doesn't work for you, Robert, let me know. If I'm off to school, I can be backup for you.
Okay. Appreciate that, Kelly. That'd be great. All right. But let me talk to him. You can do the introduction, Patrick. Send the
Yeah,
email.
I can. Yep.
Then let me ask a couple of ask him some questions and see where this is going. And then Kelly, you may, by default, you may.
The only other consideration for this, though, is that if this does become a September 29th need, we would have to appoint you before that. So we might have to have a secondary meeting just before that time frame. So another meeting in September. That might be warranted anyway, just because of what we've got coming up. So that might be fine. But just FYI, I'm going to be sending out a lot of dates for that standpoint if we do.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll make a note, Robert and Kelly, as a possibility. It could be this is a perfect dovetail of department reorganization conversation, which is why I included it in that line item for tonight. Hey, this is our department reorganization. Here's what various different pieces people are going to be covering. And as such, we're now going to appoint our stormwater utility person as well. All right, I think that's everything I had. I've closed my agenda, so I have no idea what I'm talking about anymore. There is only, sorry, Simpson, is that something?
That's my kid in the background,
The
sorry.
kid in the background. Keep going, kiddo. We love it. The only other pieces that we have, I believe, are, community member comments. Wait, there's something in the chat. Oh, Shireen was leaving. Yep. Let's see if there's anybody from a community standpoint. There is not. There is our delightful secretary and ECAT. So with that, I am looking for everyone's favorite, don't say it yet, Mike, motion if there are no other comments or discussions to be had tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, you beat you, Mike.
No.
You beat
Second to Petra.
Alrighty. Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Balin.
Yes.
I second guessed it again as soon as I looked at it.
You're getting it right. That's the thing.
I don't know why I keep looking at it and going. Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Diaz is gone. I'm an idiot. Percio.
Yes.
I am a yes. And Petro.
Yes.
Alrighty. Thank you all for your attention. I'll have a doodle out with some options ASAP, as well as Kelly just sent me the Excel sheet, so I'll send that out with all the other information from our meeting. Thank you all. I appreciate you all. We'll speak to you soon.
Folks, have a good evening.